having his PPT with their hands.
Yeah. I will later on share my slides.
Yes, sir.
I hope there's no problem sharing the slide when you allow me to share later.
Sir, pardon, sir.
No, you will allow me to share the slides later. Am I right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you can share. If there is any problem, that we will assist you, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Of course. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
We can start sharp at 10, sir.
Can I try to show the slide?
Yes, sir. Please, we can have a rehearsal. No issues.
So I will show. It says present your entire screen, a window or a tab. So I put a window, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see anything now?
Yes, sir. This is the first slide. No. Yes, sir. Yes. Innovative instruction and research linking. It is very crystal clear, sir.
Yeah, okay. All right. You can see the full screen, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. It is a full screen.
Okay.
Slides already there. Mail iruk. Pass on to next one, sir.
You can only see the screen. You cannot see me, right? Can you see me?
Yes, sir. I can see also. Your face is there.
Yeah.
In the corner. And your slide is in the middle.
Okay.
Just move on to next slide, sir, whether it is working or not.
Okay, next slide. Can you see the next slide?
No, sir, it is not moving. It is still in first slide.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
This is first slide. Now second slide.
No. Only in first slide. Pandiswari, sorry, sir. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Shall I? Pandiswari, just you try. Pandiswari, நீ ட்ரை பண்ணுமா. நீ அந்த கொஞ்சம் சாரோட ஸ்லைடு ஒன்று இருக்குல்ல, அதை அப்படியே மூவ் பண்ணி காட்டுறியா? பாண்டிஸ்வரி, are you there?
ஓகேங்க சார், பண்றேன் சார்.
நீங்க பண்ணுங்க பாப்போம். ஏன்னா சாருக்கு அங்க இருந்து வர கஷ்டமா இருந்துச்சுன்னா நீங்க அசிஸ்ட் பண்ணிருங்கம்மா. மூவ் பண்ணுங்க அடுத்த ஸ்லைடுக்கு. Sorry, sir. Could you see series?
Yeah. I can only see the first slide now.
Oh, but here it is moving second, third.
Oh, I can't see it because you see, if I move it, I can see it here.
Sir, please. Oh, sir, please. Could you please stop your PPT? Just to watch it, whether she is sharing is visible for you or not.
Let me stop sharing first.
Yes, sir. பாண்டிஸ்வரி சார் ஸ்டாப் பண்ண உடனே ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஸ்லைட்ல நீங்க போட்டு காட்டுங்கம்மா. சார் ஸ்டாப் பண்ணிடுவாங்க.
Now who is showing the slide now?
Now our technical assistant, Miss Pandiswari, sir, volunteer,
Okay.
our student.
All right. Can she change the slide now?
Sir, is it visible for you, sir?
Yeah. Now I can see second slide.
Okay, sir. Yeah, she is moving to third and fourth.
Yeah, but seems to be in a PDF format, huh?
Yes, sir.
But I'm wondering why I cannot share the slide.
Yeah. No issues, sir. We will assist you.
So you mean to say as I present, you will move the slide next, huh?
Yes, sir. When you say next, then she will go on or pass on to next one.
Okay, that's fine. But I really like to control it myself, but it's not possible, huh?
Okay, sir. If it is possible, it is well and good. Otherwise, we have an alternative, sir.
Okay.
It is quite comfortable that dealing with yourself, your own self.
Yes, true.
But for heaven's sake, it will happen.
Yes,
If it
that's
is
good.
not, if it is not possible, that we will assist you. We are here
Right.
to assist you, sir.
Sure,
We are
sure,
always
sure.
at your service. Thank
Sure,
you, sir.
sure. Okay.
Pandiswari, be alert, ma. Pandiswari, are you there? பாண்டீஸ்வரி அன்மியூட் பண்ணிட்டு பேசுங்கம்மா. பாண்டீஸ்வரி, மொபைல்ல இருந்து பிரசன்ட் பண்றீங்களா பாண்டீஸ்வரி?
It looks like from mobile phone.
மொபைல் தான் சார் பண்றேன்.
உங்களோட டெக்னாலஜி அது ஐ மீன் லேப் இல்லையாப்பா?
லேப் இல்லைங்க சார்.
சரி, வேற யார் நம்ம லேப் வச்சிருக்காங்க? அப்ப நீங்க ஒரு நிமிஷம் சார், ப்ளீஸ் ஹோல்ட் ஆன்.
Okay.
பாண்டீஸ்வரி ஒரு நிமிஷம் வெயிட் பண்ணுங்கம்மா. நீங்க நீங்க அப்படின்னா மொபைல் யாரும் கால் அட்டன் பண்ணாதீங்கம்மா, கட் ஆயிரும். நீங்க ஜஸ்ட் யூ கோ இன்சைட், ப்ளீஸ் பி வித் த பிரசன்டேஷன் டில் தி எண்ட்.
ஓகேங்க சார்.
On any account, it should not be interrupted. Please keep it in mind. Okay, thank you, ma.
Good morning,
Shankar Anna, good morning Anna. Our resource person joined Sir Balakrishnan.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
ஜாயின் பண்றாங்களா? தேங்க்யூ. அந்த இதை பத்தி நம்ம இன்ஸ்டியூட் பத்தி எதுவும் ஸ்கிரீன் பண்றதுன்னா ஸ்கிரீன் பண்ணலாமே. இப்ப
வாய்ஸ் இஸ் பிரேக்கிங்.
இன்ஸ்டியூட் பத்தி எதுவும் ஸ்கிரீன் பண்றதா இருந்தா இப்ப ஸ்கிரீன் பண்றீங்களா?
Which institute? எந்த இன்ஸ்டிடியூட் பத்தி சொல்றீங்க சார்? நம்ம
இது காந்திகிராம் லக்ஷ்மி காலேஜ் ஆஃப் இன்ஜினியரிங்ல இருந்து சில போட்டோஸ் எல்லாம் ஷேர் பண்றேன் நாங்க.
Oh, I'm from Malaysia, sir. I'm the speaker.
Welcome, sir. You are a speaker for the day. Welcome,
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
We are just waiting.
Yeah. Evia, is it possible for you now?
Sir, I asked Pandishwari to share this, sir.
Okay, just wait. Let me play with it. Let me play with it.
Okay, sir.
Pandiswari, you may play now.
Vincent sir, good morning, sir.
Okay, sir.
Vincent sir, good morning.
Sir, good morning, sir. Our honorable resource person has joined already.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. Good morning, sir. Our resource person has joined already.
sir.
We shall start at exactly 10 o'clock,
Yes,
sir.
sir, I am ready, sir. I am ready, sir.
Let us wait for 15 minutes,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
Good morning to all. Good morning to all.
Pandiswari, please.
சார் கேக்குதாங்க சார்?
Yes.
டேய் பாண்டிச்சேரி கொஞ்சம் பிரேக் ஆகுது, கொஞ்சம் கரெக்ட் பண்ணுங்க. பிரேக் ஆகுது வாய்ஸ்.
பாண்டிச்சேரி கொஞ்சம் ஸ்டாப் பண்ணுங்க. பாண்டிச்சேரி ஸ்டாப் பண்ணுங்க. உங்க
பிரேக் ஆகுது கண்டினியூஸா இல்ல. அகைன் கொஞ்சம் கரெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டு போடுங்க.
தனலட்சுமி மேம் கேக்குதா மேம்? ஆடிபிளா இருக்கா?
இல்ல வீடியோ இதான் தெரியுது, ஆடியோ வரலையே. ஃபர்ஸ்ட் போட்ட மாதிரி கூட ட்ரை பண்ணுங்க. பட் வருது வருது. ஓகே, பட் வாய்ஸ் கம்மியா இருக்கு.
Very low voice, sir. Play பண்ற டிவைஸ்ல full sound வைங்க. உங்களோட டிவைஸ்ல.
அதுல மேக்ஸிமம் சவுண்ட் அவ்வளவுதான் வரும்.
அப்படியா?
இல்ல அப்ப இந்த வீடியோவுல சவுண்ட் கூட்ட முடியுமான்னு பாருங்க. அதுவும் மேக்ஸிமம் தான் இருக்கு.
வின்சென்ட் சார், யூ கேன் ஜஸ்ட் லீவ் இட் as such. ஏன்னா இது யூடியூப்ல கரெக்டா தான் வந்துட்டு இருக்குங்கிறாங்க சத்தம். கூகுள் மீட்ல தான் கரெக்டா வரல.
ஓகே தென்.
ஓகே நோ.
அதனால நமக்கு இது ஓகே, ஜஸ்ட் லீவ் இட். யூடியூப்ல போற வரைக்கும் போட்டு நீங்க அந்த டைம் ரெகுலேட் பண்ணிட்டு இன்ட்ரோடக்ஷன் ஆரம்பிக்கணும்னா கரெக்ட் டயத்துக்கு ஆரம்பிச்சிடும்.
7 minutes இருக்கு.
ஓகே.
யூடியூப்ல நல்லா கிளியரா இருக்குன்னு பிள்ளைங்க சொல்றாங்க.
ஆமா, அது வாட்ச் பண்ணா அது கிளியரா தான் வருது சவுண்ட்.
Good morning, Madam Karthiyani has joined. Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, good morning. Yes, I've joined.
Subramanian sir, madam வந்துட்டாங்க.
Madam, good morning, madam. Madam, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome to our FDP program. Good morning.
Thank you.
Sir, is it working, sir? No, sir.
Yeah, I can see on my side. I can see my slide. I can change the slide, but this is the first slide.
Please change. Go for second one, sir.
Okay, this is the second one.
No, sir.
Can you see the second one?
It's not. No, sir. No, sir. I think we can assist you.
Okay, then I think you share the slide then.
Okay, Uma Maheshwari, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Helen, shall we start? Subramanian sir.
Yes, sir, I'm ready. I'm ready, sir. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Really, sir?
Yeah, we are on time. Yes, you may proceed, Helen.
Vincent sir, the screen should be full screen.
Yes, wait. Sorry, something. Yes, sir. Yes, Sankar sir.
Just that the PowerPoint you have to share as a full screen.
Okay,
Full
ma'am.
screen.
Uma Maheshwari, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I pointed.
PowerPoint. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Helen, just you start, ma'am.
Okay, sir. A pleasant morning, everyone. Before we begin, dear participants, a kind information for you. Please mute your mic and turn off the video for better experience and to avoid interruptions. Thank you. On behalf of the organizing team, I welcome you all for the 1-week online international faculty development program jointly organized between Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, Chennai and Lakshmi College of Education, Gandhigram, along with our media partner, Tamil America TV, New York, USA. And today, the 50th FDP at this juncture, I invite Ms. Yam Tulasi to welcome the gathering. Welcome, Tulasi.
Welcome the challenges. Look for the opportunities in every situations to learn and grow in wisdom. Good morning to one and all gathered here. And it's a great pleasure for me to welcome every one of you for this International Faculty Development Program jointly organized by Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University and Lakshmi College of Education. First of all, I would like to welcome our Vice Chancellor, Registrar, Deans, Controller of Examination, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, and our respected Chairman, Secretary, Principal, and the faculty members of Lakshmi College of Education. We welcome you all. Next, I feel honored to welcome the dignitaries of this day, Professor Dr. Balakrishnan Muniandi, Professor of Educational Technology, Head, Center for Research and Innovation, Vavasam Open University, Penang, Malaysia. We welcome you, sir. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. Karthiyani Subramaniam, Associate Professor, Faculty of Education, University Technology, Mara, Malaysia. We welcome you, ma'am. Then I welcome Dr. P. Subramanian, Deputy Director, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, and Dr. F. Vincent Rajsegar, Assistant Professor, Lakshmi College of Education, who are going to introduce the chief guest. Welcome you, sir. And I extend a warm welcome to our organizing committee who are playing their role perfectly behind the screen. We welcome you all. With immense pleasure, I welcome the principals, the heads of the department, the faculty members and students from other colleges. We welcome you all. I am extremely glad to welcome each and every one of the participants.
Yeah, thank you. Most respected Director of Center for National and International Academic Collaborations of Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, Professor S. Mani sir. Most respected resource person of the session 1 of today's program, Professor Dr. Balakrishnan Muniandi sir, and Karthiyayani Subramanian madam, and most respected principal of Lakshmi College of Education, Dr. Malarveli madam, most respected organizing secretary come my friend Dr. Vincent Rajasekhar sir, respected madams, Dhanalakshmi madam, Uma Mageshwari madam, respected advisory of this FDP program, Agaram Sankaran sir, and other dignitaries who have joined with us in this virtual forum, and most respected participants, my warm and special good morning to one and all gathered here. It's my great privilege and it's my great honor to introduce about the resource person of session 1 of today's program, Professor Dr. Balakrishnan Muniandi sir. So Professor Dr. Balakrishnan Muniandi sir, presently serving as a head of Center for Research and Innovation of Viveshan Open University, and he is also serving as a professor of Education Technology of Viveshan Open University, Malaysia. Sir has received his Doctor of Philosophy from University of Oregon, United States of America, and Master in Education from the Center for Instructional Technology and Multimedia, University Science, Malaysia. His areas of specializations are multimedia authoring, management and evaluation of multimedia project, research internship, research methods and issues in instructional multimedia. He has guided many PhD scholars and MS scholars. His research areas are wisdom in education technology, instructional technology, educational technology, and ICT in education, ICT in teacher education, research methods in instructional technology research. He has completed many research projects. Examples, the use of mobile applications to support speech-delayed children among Malay speakers, research in education technology and epistemological and methodological analysis, proposing a post-andragogy model of learning for Greek generation adults in the 21st century. From the Ministry of Higher Education. He is acting as a member in so many professional bodies, like member of Southeast Asian Association for Institutional Research in the year 2008 to 2010, EXCO member of Malaysian Education Technology Association in the year 2010 to 2012, member of Malaysian Education Technology Association from the year 1987 to till now, member of International Association of Computer Science and Information Technology, member of Toastmasters International, senior member of International Economics Development Research Center, and he has received so many prestigious awards like Best Student Award for the Certificate Program in Education Technology by University Science Malaysia in the year 1987 and 1988, Letter of Appreciation for Excellent Academic Performance in PhD Program from the Malaysian Ambassador to the United States of America in the year 1997, Excellent Service Award from the Ministry of Education Malaysia in the year 2002, Excellent Service Award from the University of Science Malaysia from the Ministry of Higher Education in the year 2008, Excellent Service Award from the University Science Malaysia Ministry of Education in the year 2013. He has organized so many number of seminars, conferences, and workshops to the benefit of the stakeholders. He is acting as the editorial board member and journal reviewer of many international journals. He has authored so many books and contributed chapters in so many books. He has presented many papers in conferences and seminars. Such a busy personality is with us. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation to share your ideas in our FDP program. We are more privileged to have an opportunity to listen to you, sir. On behalf of the organizing team, we wholeheartedly invite you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. P. Subramaniam from Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University. I also like to extend my thanks to Dr. Vincent Rajasekhar, who has been working with me in preparing for this presentation. I also like to thank Dr. Karthik Deepa, who actually first contacted me to participate in this program. And it's morning in Tamil Nadu, but it's afternoon here in Malaysia. It's 12:30 in the afternoon. So good morning and good afternoon. And I also like to thank all the participants for being able to be here. Can all of you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear.
Yeah, I'm audible to all?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I shall now start my presentation. My presentation topic is as displayed, innovative instruction and research. How do we link teaching and research activities? So, okay, let's look at this second slide, publication from the United States of America on how bridging research and practice. When I say practice, I refer to the activity of teaching and learning. Practices need to be based on research outputs, findings, and evidence, which is our practice should be evidence-based practice. When we do something, when you teach using a certain method, that method must be proven to be good or is evidence to be good, then we apply it. We don't just apply it, but it should be linked to the research findings. And number two, research is carried out to improve our practice. So why do we carry out research in education? We carry out research in education to find new ways of teaching, new methods of teaching and so on. So that's the idea. The research is actually to inform and change our practices. And number three, research and practices are interrelated. Very often we say that, oh, researchers are from the universities, professors and all that, and practitioners are in the schools. These are not two, although they are two different places and people, but they have to be linked where research inform practices. And researchers will do research on topics that need to be done and researched. So there need to be a bridging of research and practice, and there's a bridging of theory and practice. We cannot say I'm a theoretician and he is a practitioner. So we need to be working together. So we need to bridge between research and practice. My outline of presentation, I'm going to briefly talk about the introduction to the main concepts that I'm going to present, some general areas of education research, and then I will zoom into instructional research, and then I will show how we can link teaching and research, and introduce some multiple methods of teaching and learning, and where can teachers actually access research-informed practices, and end up with a conclusion and may open to question and answer session. So when you look at instruction, this term also means education, which refers to instruction. In my presentation will refer to teaching and learning. And of course, we are teaching and learning of knowledge, skills, and attitude. And anything that is done purposely to facilitate learning is instruction. And the third one says that any intentional effort to stimulate learning by the deliberate arrangement of experiences to help learners achieve a desirable change in capacity. So instruction is basically about teaching and learning activities. Okay, teaching. Teaching is concerted effort of sharing knowledge and experience, which is usually organized within a discipline and more generally the provision of stimulus to the psychological and intellectual growth of a person by another person or artifact. This is what we call teacher-led or resource-led. So teaching can be done by a human person, or it can be resource-led. Some multimedia or some book can also be a resource that can lead to teaching. Next, when we look at learning, what's most important in the process of teaching and learning, the students should be learning. Learning is a permanent change in behavior which is not due to maturation. This is a very old definition where it was looked at. If somebody has learned something, there must be a change in the behavior of the person. If we say that somebody is learned, what does it mean? Is it he has got a certificate or a degree or a master's? Or is it as a result of learning there has been a change in his behavior? And that's the learned person. So here learning means learner means student focus. So teaching and learning, remember please, there can be teaching and yet no learning. So the teacher will be teaching and the students will be sitting there and they may not be learning, but they can also be learning without teaching. The students learn, but nobody is teaching, but they're learning. Ideally, we want teaching and learning to happen simultaneously in the class. Teaching takes place and learning happens. Next, research. Research What is research is a scientific and systematic process of finding truth. We want to find the truth and find solutions to human problems. There are fundamental research and also applied research. Fundamental, where you want to develop a theory or a framework or a model, or applied research to solve some problems. And there are many areas of research in education. In this presentation, we are interested in instructional research, research related to the process of teaching and learning, and how research output can improve instructional practices. Now, practice, in the context of this presentation, practice refers to the instructional practices, which is teaching and learning. Now, let's look at educational research generally. Education is a very big umbrella term, it's a big area. Education is a very broad subject. Educational research can be conducted in many subfields. Hence, its areas of study or research are also very broad. Let's look at some of the educational research areas. Some of these includes philosophical, so you can do research in many of these areas. Could be philosophical foundation, sociology of education, research in educational psychology, research in learner and learning, research in teacher education, educational technology, educational planning and administration, curriculum development, and research in education. You're doing research on researchers in education, economics of education, evaluation and measurement, early childhood education, elementary education, secondary education, higher education, vocational education, adult education, distance education, values education, professional education, language education, educational policies and projects, higher health education, peace education, human rights education, consumer education, minority education, women education, inclusive education. So many education, so many areas of research that we can do. So certain people will be specializing in certain. So I'm just showing that it's a very, very broad. Next, I have a question. Anyone can unmute and try to answer this question. My question is, where does learning take place? Is it A, in school, B, at home, C, at the library, or D, in our environment, or E, none of the above? Any participants like to unmute and try to answer this question?
Sir, everywhere.
Okay, very good. Is there any other answer? Okay, thank you for your feedback. Now let's look at the next slide. Learning actually takes place in the brain. We can be anywhere. You are right. The brain works everywhere. The answer is welcome. But actually, the process of learning actually takes place within the brain. There is a book published by the National Research Council in US in the year 2000. Incidentally, I was doing finishing my PhD at that time. And they look at how people learn, what actually happened in the brain of the person. Most of the time, we'll be looking at what influences learning. Is it external factors or is it internal factors? Now, let's look at the next slide. Learning is an internal process. What happens between the two ears, what happens in the brain is also very important. We need to understand the internal processes of learning. So sometimes we think by providing good accommodation, by providing good resources, we are providing external resources. That is, yes, that is important. The student must have eaten the food and so on. But what happens in the brain is important. So something that you need to think about, that the real learning takes place within the brain. Now, let's look at the traditional classrooms. I'm sure we are aware of all these classrooms. We can find in the 1800 or 1900, and look at the traditional classrooms. And in today's world, classrooms have not changed a lot, Now let's look at some of the modern classrooms that they have shown that how the students are seated in a group, in a leisurely manner, or they can also still find that large group of people sitting together in a big auditorium. So have we changed? If you look at the world outside us, many things have changed. The banks have changed, the way we do business have changed, the way we entertain ourselves have changed, the way we do work we do online, all kind of things have changed. But how much changes have taken place in education? Now let's look. Like I said, many things around us have changed. The way we work, the way we do business, the way we communicate with one another has changed over the years. The way we travel, for example, the way we entertain ourselves, the way we live in our houses, etc., have changed. We also need to change the way we teach and learn. Do you agree with me? I'm sure you agree with me.
Yes, bro. Yes, bro.
Yes, sir.
So have we, have we innovated our teaching and learning activities? Has the classroom, these are some of the questions that we can ask. Has the classroom designs changed? Have the teaching and learning activities changed? Are we still teaching as a sage on the stage? Are we like a guide by the side of the students? We need to change our instructional activities according to the new age and new develops. We know that the students today are different from the students of yesteryears. So do we need to accommodate to the new mindset of the students that we have in the school today? What do we do? What do we need to do? These are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. So the next slide. So we need to change. One of the things that we need to keep in our mind is everything around us is impermanent. Impermanent means not permanent. The school, everything has changed. The surroundings have changed. The designs of things have changed. Everything is changed. Please go a bit slow. I have not finished the earlier slide. Earlier slide, please. Hello. Hello. Earlier slide, please. No. The earlier back, please, back. Back again, please.
Yes, Professor, we are able to see and listen to you, Professor. Please go ahead.
Okay, so we say that factors influencing learning, normally we say the socio-economic background, educational system and infrastructure, culture, or nurturing the students as external factors. So we also need to look at the internal factors that influence learning and education, look at the mental health of the student, the internal learning processes, the intrinsic motivation, and the nature of the person.
Listen பண்ணுங்க கரெக்ட்டா அவர் பேசுறத.
Okay, next, please. So when you look at the internal process of learning in a student, we can see that the human information processing model, there are a lot of things happening in the mind of the student. So when the student receives a stimuli through the eye, through the ear, and so on, through the sense organ, we need to look at the sensory memory and look at the capacity of the intake a student can take in, and then some of them forget at this stage. And then how they pay attention to what is being learned and brought to the working memory. And at this stage too, some of them will forget. And some will encode them to be stored in the long-term memory. And when the time comes, they'll be able to retrieve. So these are some of the things that happens inside the head of a student. This is the human information processing model that we can do research and find out why learning is not happening in some students. Most of the time, we'll be looking at the external factors. So there could be also some internal factors. And we can do research to find out what is happening in the brain or the head of the student. Next slide. Okay, when you talk about research on learning, nowadays there's so many brand of learning. For every alphabet, we have a brand of learning. Say, for example, A for active learning or authentic learning. Then we have blended learning. We have constructivist learning. We have didactic learning. We have e-learning. We have flipped learning, game-based learning, holistic learning. I can almost have a brand or name of learning from A to Z. There are many different methods that have come about, to the A to Z of learning. So research can be carried out on all these areas of different learning to find out the suitability of this learning in our students. So learning is a very complex thing actually. Over the years, many types of learning have emerged and have gone out. And sometimes it's like a fad, Some new branding of learning comes and everybody gets busy with it and then they forget it. If you look at the book by Larry Cuban, who is a historian of education, he will show you that how different kinds of learning have come and gone. So when you talk about research-informed instructional practices, so our practices in the classroom must be informed by research finding. This is where we have to link research and teaching. So our practices in the classroom, when you use a certain method to teach, it must have been researched and found that it is a very good method to teach and so on. So our practices will be evidence-based practices. So we will have evidence-based instructional practices, and we can apply all this research finding to instruction. The problem now is that one group of people are doing research, another group of people are practicing in the class. So we need to have a link. We need to have a link between the researchers and the practitioners. What's the point of doing lots of research and about teaching and learning, but it is not transferred to the knowledge of the teachers? So then teachers too have to have, maybe they cannot become a researcher in the beginning, but as time go on, they can also be involved in doing research. But there has to be some kind of link. How can the teachers use knowledge that is obtained through research? So there are many, resources that teachers can access. Maybe libraries can invest in purchasing or buying. I know the present trend is just to look into Google and then find some ways. But there are better ways where people have done good work and have compiled all these findings and research and all that in various resources. I want to share with you some of the resources that are very useful, where teachers can access research-informed practices, such as there are handbooks of teaching and learning. There are many, many handbooks of teaching and learning. A compilation of research findings about various methods of teaching and learning. There's something called Encyclopedia of Teaching and Learning, which is still in existence today. There are also Teaching and Learning Digest, where they have run, they will give you very, very brief accounts of findings about various researchers. There are places like Eric Clearinghouse. You can get a lot of databases on research findings on education. You can also look at research journals. There are many, many research journals on teaching and learning, where teachers can refer to them and see what research has said about certain method of teaching, what newer methods have been suggested. There are also teaching and learning conference proceedings from certain places. You can download conference proceedings to find out what different methods. So this is very, very important. And also finally, we can look at institutional websites. There are many, many websites that we can look into research findings, what research has said about different methods. So these are some of the examples that I like to show. Some handbooks on research, on teaching and learning. There are many, many different types of handbooks on research and teaching. Next. See, there are still more. There is not a one source. There are many sources, many, many handbooks of research on teaching, handbook of research, as you can see. The next is, we can also have Encyclopedia of Research, educational research. If you look at this, they have very many volumes after volumes have been published. Encyclopedia of Evan. In many countries, they refer to this kind of encyclopedia. Encyclopedia of Educational Research, where they've compiled various kinds of research carried out on different methods of teaching and learning and what the research has found out. So this is one resource where teachers can use. But before that, they should have access to this. This is where libraries can also acquire these resources. They will have research digest. We can have even books, research-based resources for college instructors. Next. ERIC, as I said, ERIC, Education Resource Information Center. You can find a lot of information from this website. You can go and search whatever you want. If you're teaching science, for example, what are the new methods of teaching science? Or you can just search for anything, and they have a thesaurus there to guide you to find the information that you need. And there's also a directory of open access journals, which is free, which teachers can go into this website, where you can find about 11,807 journals Some of the students, the masters and PhD students, sometimes come to me and ask, where can I publish? You go to the right resources. There are so many avenues, you know. In this website, for example, in the directory of open access journals, you will find something like 11,807 journals, and this number increases every day. And they are presented in 80 different languages from 126 countries. And there were more than 6 million article records. And this number keep on increasing. So this is one of the resources that in the digital age, you can have access to them. Go and look at the journal. If you're teaching mathematics, look at journals related to mathematics. Look at the research done on how to improve the teaching of mathematics and things like that. And another website that I would recommend for teachers and educators is World Conferences, where this website shows World Conference Alert, all the conferences, and you're lucky in some of the conferences you go, you look at past conferences, and also their proceedings can also be found. So these are some of the resources that you can have access to find out various methods. Okay. Next is conference proceedings. Also databases where you can download conference proceeding based on certain areas of research, depending the subjects you teach. You know. Okay. Next, there is also what you call research organizations. You can go and look around in the research organizations around the world. There are many, for example, the National Center for Educational Research, NCER in US, has got a lot of research in education. You can even find funding opportunities here for those of you who are interested in doing research. You can find funding opportunities. Next. Okay, these are some of the research organizations that you can go in the websites, look at the British Educational Resource Association, which is called BERA, or American Educational Research Association. And India too. In India, there is what you call All India Association for Educational Research. And each of these organizations, they have their own journals, and Educational Research Association of Singapore, World Education Research Association. This is another one more of a world at the world level. And you have Australian Association for Research. So there are many research organizations where teachers can access and look into what you can get from there. Next, I'm coming to the conclusion now. This is important. Your takeaway from this presentation. I'll be very happy even if you can take away one small piece of knowledge from this presentation. First thing, we need to innovate our teaching and learning practices, and because there are multiple paradigms and methods in teaching and learning, you know. So innovation is very important. We cannot be teaching the same way we have taught 20 or 30 years. Some people say that they have 30 years of experience, maybe 30 years of experience teaching the same method over 30 years. But we need to change these methods because the students are changing. The times are changing, new methods are emerging, so we need to innovate our teaching and learning, number one. Number two, research and practice are interrelated. We shouldn't be looking at researchers and practitioners as separate group of people. Actually, they are informing each other. Researchers do research for the practitioners to improve their practice. And practitioners also must look at researchers' research output for them to apply it in the classroom. Number two. Number three, practices are based on research evidence. We know that, you know, like in medical sciences, for example, if they're using a certain vaccine, it is based on research. So similarly in teaching and learning, when we are using a certain method, that method must be time tested and as shown to improve, and then we use that method to bring about the changes. In education, almost everything has been researched. There's so much research has already been done. What we need to do now is to apply the research findings to improve our practice. Okay. The next one are researchers and practitioners. They are collaborators. They are not competitors, but they are collaborators. So researchers and practitioners. It's a good idea. Sometimes some universities, they adopt a certain school. You know, the university have got lecturers who do research and all that. They adopt a certain school. And when they do research findings in the school and all that, and they can apply it and they can collaborate. So universities have their adopted schools. So the researchers from the universities and the practitioners who are teachers in the schools can collaborate. And the last one, researchers are actually practitioners. Researchers should be practitioners. If you're doing research, but you do not have practice in that area, it's difficult. And practitioners are also researchers. So in the best case scenario, practitioners are also researchers. So that's the ideal condition, you know. So research and practice has to be linked. And this is the bridge I'm trying to tell you, that researchers and practitioners, the practitioners of teaching and learning, have to collaborate together and work together to solve the problem. So next. So that's all. You just presented, I think, over half an hour. And if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dear participants, if you have any queries, please put it on the chat box.
This is my email address and my phone number. If you need to collaborate later, you can do so. Is there any question that I can answer? We still have a lot of time. Hello, everyone. Are you still there?
Yes, Prof. Hello, Prof. Congratulations. It was a very wonderful presentation. I have a question in mind. Teachers in the classroom are usually concerned with developing teaching materials, teaching strategies, dealing with students. Can you give us some guidelines on how we can use the learning theories to deal with this? Thank you.
Yeah, this is Dr. Kartiani, is it?
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, it's nice to see you from the same country in a different platform. Anyway, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, I know, because I have been a teacher in a school. I have also been a teacher trainer in the teacher training college, and I've also been a professor in the university. So I find that there is a lot of silos, silos, everybody working in their own comfort zone. I'm in a school teacher, I'm doing the way I have been doing. So like you, I'm sure you have experience in teaching as well. So when you develop a teaching material, when teachers develop a teaching material, how do they go about developing the teaching material? Is it out of the blues that somebody suggests something that you do, or you look at some of the things, what kind of materials has been researched upon, and they do this kind of research? So like at the school, like in Malaysia, we have a lot of teachers doing action research. They do action research to find out how they can solve a certain problem. So that is one way where the school teachers, they can do action research and so on to do something. And it is a good idea to link, with the universities. Like I said, that many schools are adopted by universities, to bridge this gap. Otherwise, the universities will be publishing in journals, and that journal and this journal. For example, let's say I do a research on flipped classroom, and I do research in a school, and I publish the article in America. What the Americans researchers will be looking, in Malaysia, somebody is doing research in this and all that. But how does it help the teacher in the classroom? This is where I said I was talking about research digest. How can the universities actually have some kind of a collaboration with the schools, where they can inform the schools, okay, if they're doing certain kind of practices, what has research said? Or what has research suggested? What kind of applications? What kind of content? The way to present this and so on. So it will be more research-based practice. Okay, Dr. Kartiani?
Yes, Prof. I think that was very clear.
I'm always wondering whether, we are talking in different places at the same time, where we are, each one of us in our own homes or wherever we can be. But It's very quiet, it's very quiet and very frightening when you sit alone and talking in front of a computer and where are the people? You don't see any faces and everybody is seeing my face.
Yes, it can be a bit intimidating in that sense.
Yeah, that's why Dr. Vincent was telling that you can do a case study about this whole scenario of this 1 week of faculty development program and the feelings and what exactly people are doing. Are they listening or, it's a great thing, to do research on. I'm so called to do this kind of research. What do people do in an online conference? Yeah, I would answer any question. Any other questions? Please ask questions.
It is in the display. Could you please read questions or shall I read it?
Yeah, you can read the display. You can read the question, please.
This is Madam Ruchira Roy has asked this. What about approaches to use in classrooms to situations to have the proper uses of methods? Let me repeat, sir. What about approaches to use in classroom situations to have the proper uses of methods?
You are asking about approaches to use in classroom. It depends on the situation. You're asking approach. First of all, you have to understand the difference between approach and method. So approach is different. How you want to approach a subject, how you want to approach a student. I'm asking on methodology. What method do I use to teach this particular thing? So the classroom teacher, the subject method teacher, for example, the teacher is teaching science and the teacher is teaching photosynthesis to the student. So how do you teach the students so that they understand what the intended objective of the teaching is, So it is very situational. Yours is a very general question. So it's very situational. It depends on the subject, what subject you're teaching. It depends on the age of the student. A younger student, you have to use more concrete methods. You have Dale's cone of experiences, Teaching can be very concrete to very abstract. So how are we going to teach that particular age group of students? And also what topic that you want to teach. In every subject, there are easy topics and there are very difficult topics.
Sir, you have muted, sir. Please unmute.
Okay. So I was saying that it depends on the subject you teach. It depends on the age group of student you're teaching. And it depends on the difficulty of the subject matter you're teaching. So when you say approach, it's different from method, what method you want to use or what approach you want to use. So you can approach a subject in a different way. You can approach a student in a different way. But when you're using a different method or different pedagogy for that method, you have to be ensuring that what subject is it you're teaching, and within the subject, what topic you're teaching. Is it an easy topic? Is it a difficult to understand topic? And then only you can decide. So, ma'am, it's a very general question, and the question needs answer in such a way that it depends on the situation, the age of the student, the topic you're teaching, the subject you're teaching, and so on.
So, Sai-G.
Yes?
Sai-G BR has asked that, what are the teaching models and how do we know should we actually, it happens in the class?
What are the teaching models and how do we, you say how should we be, actually it happens.
How do we know it actually happens in the class?
So you may have to make it happen because, see, when you're using a certain method, okay, you give me an example of a method that you want to use. So you want to teach certain method. Maybe you want to use a flipped classroom, okay? You want to use the flipped classroom. So when you want to teach, you have to know the method you're using, So you want to give them some video clips or something to read first at home before coming to the class. And when these students come to the class, you will start discussing with them as a group and so on. So you have to do it. You have to plan and do it. It doesn't just happen. You have to plan the method and then execute the method. I don't know whether I'm getting you answered or not, because you're asking me how to ensure that it has happened. Because you have to decide what method you want to use. Is that okay? Divya, is it? Divya Vasantakumari.
Sir, it's the question of Saji. It's the
Question of? Okay.
Saji.
Right. Okay. Okay, Taji. Thanks.
Sir?
Okay, next.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Audible?
Yeah, you're ready.
This is the question of Debasis Mavatra. The question is, sir, as we know that metacognition is a state of mind and not constant in nature. So how can we take it as a research problem?
Metacognition activity is a state. We have later studies that have done studies on metacognition using certain devices where they put it on their heads. I can't get the name right away, and then they study what happens, what is happening in the brain. For example, some years ago they were doing studies on people who meditate and so on. So how the different areas of the brain get lights up when you do certain things. So people doing research in metacognition has gone into internal state of mind. So you can look up more on this, that metacognitive studies using devices, to see what is happening and which areas of the mind is lighting up and things like that. Yeah. This has gone very, very scientific, it has gone into the brain, how people are studying what happens in the brain. So you cannot study the brain from outside. You have to look into what is happening in the brain. A lot of brain-based research has been done, newer research findings. What happens in the brain and so on and so forth.
Can I ask a question related to that?
Sure.
About NLP, Neuro-Linguistics program, there are a lot of research has come. But how are we going to take it to the school teachers level?
Well, that's a good one. I've heard a lot about neuro-linguistic programming. I myself not an expert in this area. That's a very good question you asked. It's a very good question, and it's innovative question actually. A lot of times this neuro-linguistic programming is often discussed in the business world and things like that. Now, if you're looking into neuro-linguistic programming and then how we can educate the teachers or train the teachers and how we can apply this concept in teaching and learning, that's a great idea. It's a good suggestion.
So good morning, sir.
Good morning.
This is Subramanian. I have introduced you.
Yes.
You have done a great job, sir. Especially as per the time management is concerned, you have done a great job. Really thankful to you, sir, for your wonderful deliberations. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You have done a very good job too, Dr. Subramaniam. I know on the first day of the trial itself, you're working very, very hard.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
so with my team, with my professor, with my colleague Vincent Rajasekhar, sir, and all of them only it is possible, sir. So we are working hard to complete this program in a grand success manner, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I take this opportunity to thank you, Dr. Vincent, and to all the participants who have been following and bearing with me. So thank you very much.
Professor, thank you very much on behalf of Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University. We have got a very grateful acknowledgement for all your to taking part in this international webinar, Professor. Thank you very much. I am Mani here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Sir, actually,
Helen,
one
you may
more
proceed,
question.
ma'am.
Sir, one more question.
Yes, ma'am. Please, ma'am.
What are the
Madam, please
methods?
proceed. Kill.
What are the methods you suggest to bring research outputs to be used by teachers in school levels?
That's a very good question, ma'am. You see, I've been thinking about it for a long time. Why the university, we are doing a lot of research. How does it come to the school? So there has to be a link, there is a link between researchers and research output in the university and to the practitioners in the school. It's a good idea, actually, if a university and a school work collaboratively together, coming up with research digest. We don't want the teachers to read the whole research. What the teachers are interested is what works, what has been researched and what works. So we can have special kind of publication for the school teachers, informing teachers about research output from the university. Thus, we build a bridge between the university and the school. I'm sure you agree that we do research and research and research. So much research has been done, but things have not changed so much. Why? Because there is the bridge between the university and the schools has to be joined or connected. So, madam, I feel that universities and teachers can work together as team, coming up with digest, coming up with some research synopsis, very simplified way of what research has suggested to be practiced in school, in the language of the teachers, So this is a very good question, actually. Actually, we can work on this idea of how we disseminate simplified research finding for practitioners in the school. Is that yes? Yeah.
Particularly, arts and science universities are doing a lot, but teacher education universities must collaborate with the teachers, school teachers, I think so.
Yeah, so collaboration is good, but we need to disseminate all these findings to the practitioners. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for sparing time with us.
Yes, thank you.
Helen,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your answers, and thank you all. Now, I invite Ms. S. Joni Infanta to deliver the gratitude. Welcome, Joni Infanta. A warm and cherished morning to everyone. It's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks. On behalf of the organizing committee and the entire fraternity, first of all, my sincere thanks to God the Almighty for making today's event a great success. On behalf of Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University and Lakshmi College of Education, I extend my gratitude to our resource person, Professor Dr. Balakrishnan Munyandi, Professor of Educational Technology, Head, Center for Research and Innovation, Wawasan Open University, Penang, Malaysia, who handled the session on innovative instruction and research, linking teaching and research. Linking teaching and research can benefit both faculty and students. Benefits for faculty: time saving, as it takes less time to prepare a lecture that is directly linked to one's research area. Benefits for student: increased confidence as learners and independent thinkers. He spent his busiest time on gracing this occasion. Today, we have an opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this will be definitely encouraging us in our future events. Your thoughts have enlightened our minds and shown us a new path. We wish to have many more role models and inspiring personalities like you in our homeland. Thank you, sir. A special thanks to Dr. P. Subramanian, Deputy Director, Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University, for introducing the resource person. Further, hearty thanks to everyone who made this meeting possible. We thank you all for being with us. Have a great day ahead. Thank you all. Thank you, Joni Infanta. Next, I would like to call upon Dr. F. Vincent Rajasekhar, sir, Assistant Professor, Lakshmi College of Education, to introduce the resource person. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Helen. Good morning, everyone. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Karthiyayani Subramanian, Madam, to this Augustus podium. If I read or go through the profile of Madam Karthikayani Subramaniam, at least it will take. Let me, in a nutshell, inspire that person, Karthikayani Subramaniam Madam. Karthikayani Subramaniam is an associate professor in education, University Technology, Mara, Malaysia. Currently operating Veritas University College in postgraduate education. She has 24 years of experience teaching and supervising at the territorial level. Her experience as the chief editor of Asian Journal of University Education, a Scopus indexed journal, is a rich source of learning, the occult nuts and bolts of academic research discourse. Dear participants, with this brief introduction, I give the Augustus podium to Madam Dr. Karthikayani Subramaniam. Madam, it is over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent. Helen, you're saying something?
Yes, ma'am. I welcome you.
Thank you.
For next session, I cordially invite Dr. Karthikayani Subramaniam, ma'am, Associate Professor, Faculty of Education, University Technology, Mara, Malaysia, to start the session on nuts and bolts of academic research writing. Welcome, ma'am. Now the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. A hearty welcome. I'm Professor Mani from Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University. We wish you to attend many more such programs in our program, in collaboration with our university and other Lakshmi College of Education. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us.
So may I begin?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You proceed.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, especially Dr. Vincent and his team for organizing this wonderful conference. I think it's very timely and also important for us to address these issues, especially if we have been following the conference these past few days. My colleagues have been talking about very pertinent, important issues, right? So I would like to congratulate the Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University and also the Lakshmi College of Education to present this important theme, which is facets of teaching. This is particularly important, especially in the pandemic situation now, where we are no longer able to go to the traditional classrooms. And we are experiencing lockdown in this situation. And in a way, we are forced to change our methods and approaches. So I feel that this is a very timely conference to discuss this. And I see this as a platform to share and also to exchange ideas. So I welcome you to interrupt me anytime, right? So before I carry on, it's actually afternoon here in Malaysia, 1:20. So good afternoon, everyone. Vanakkam. And also Salam Sejahtera. Salam Sejahtera means Valga Valamudan in Tamil. That is what my colleagues told me. So Salam Sejahtera. I hope you enjoy my talk for the next 1 hour or so. So I'm going to share my slides with you. Just give me a second. Is this visible to you? Is this visible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
No, madam, it is
blank comes in. Now yes.
Now it's
Yeah,
visible, ma'am.
It's visible, ma'am, now.
All right. So thank you. Now, this is the title of my presentation, The Nuts and Bolts of Academic Discourse. Well, it doesn't look very sophisticated with my colleagues. It's rather mundane, nuts and bolts. But eventually, I think you will learn why I have chosen to discuss this topic, right? Now, I would like to share my experience with you. I'm not teaching you, but I take this session as a sharing session. And where do I come from? Just now, your colleague introduced me, and she said that I've been teaching at university for 20 over years. I have been teaching the undergraduate, masters, and also the postgraduate students. I also supervise PhD students at this point of my career. And there are a lot of learning experiences for me in this journey, right? I'm also teaching courses like second language acquisition, academic discourse writing, social linguistics. And while I teach my students, there are abundance of knowledge that I've also learned from my students. And when it comes to writing, there are different aspects of writing. And for today, I would like to share something on academic discourse, particularly academic research discourse, right? I was also introduced as a chief editor of this Asian Journal of University Education. This is an international journal. In short, we call it as AJU. That is the website that you can go to if you want to have a look at the types of articles that we publish. The main theme of this journal article is on university education. And we do get some, we do get articles that are related to teacher education, teacher practices. Now, why I'm showing you this, in a way, of course, I would like to promote this to you. But another reason is because the experience of being a chief editor has allowed me to gain some insights into academic research writing, particularly the kind of problems that writers have. I'm not talking about undergraduate students or postgraduate students, even among my colleagues. Seasoned senior lecturers, because they are so used to teaching. Writing is a different cup of tea. So, being a chief editor, I have another colleague who does the same job with me, Prof. Chan. Both of us are the chief editors for this journal. This is indexed in Scopus, ERIC, Asian Citation Index, and also DOAJ, the Directory of Open Journal Access. So doing this editorial work has allowed me to, compile the issues, the problems in writing. And that is what I want to highlight today with you, right? Because when you talk about academic discourse in general, we can talk about teacher talk. We can talk about formal or informal talking and speaking. We can talk about the different modes, through online, or also we can also talk about face-to-face. These are the different modes of communication. And all this happen, and we can analyze them in relation to academic discourse. But how is academic research discourse different? Because when we talk about academic discourse, I'm specifically talking about the research aspects. So in short, you can call it as academic research discourse. There are some terms, some researchers have used these terms in literature. So the core business that we are going to talk about is academic research discourse and the problems and issues. So I have an agenda, and my agenda is to talk about, of course, as I mentioned, academic research discourse, but I also want to talk about the importance of creating awareness for students, not only students, for writers. Let's talk about writers, okay? Because I'm sure there are new lecturers who want to start writing and publishing, okay? So not just students, but if there are undergraduate students who are interested in publishing, I think we should encourage that. I've had undergraduate students who have published in journal articles because the quality of their work is good, but they do not know how or where to publish. So that's where you should play a more important role to create this kind of awareness, to tell them this is where or how you should go about it. There are conferences that you can present. So this is not something that is new. I'm sure you'd have seen a lot of these materials, even in your own university or your college. If you do not see this kind of genres in your university environment, I suggest that you place them or highlight these genres in the environment, because the more the students see this, the more familiar they will become with these different genres. When I say genres, it simply means the different text types, the different texts that are available in the environment. In a way, you can talk about literacy. Okay, in a way, you can talk about literacy, you can talk about the writing skills or other skills, all right? But what's important is that generally we need to increase their awareness or create what researchers call as consciousness raising. We need to raise their consciousness. So consciousness here in simple word means being aware, right? There are similar terms in research. You will find terms like academic socialization, awareness, okay, consciousness raising. So, and you can also relate metacognition to this. So I think this is an important agenda. It's not just knowing about the nuts and bolts. I haven't touched on my topic for the day yet, but I'm just giving you a preamble. So these are the important aspects. This is the big picture before we start discussing the nuts and the bolts. Okay, I have another slide here. The purpose of this is just to show you that there are so many different variations, and we take it for granted that our students know what this means. We take it for granted that the students know how to read from this text. They know how to fill up forms. There are so many text types or different genres in the environment, right? And the university or the college is an important context in which you must expose your students to these different variations, right? So that's one thing. You know, after this conference, look around you. Are you allowing your students the opportunities to view or see this text? Right? So let's make it familiar. Let's put up this important text in their environment, right? So in a way, we try to socialize them into this. There are different variations, and these texts exist in different modes, right? You can have something that is very high-end, like a journal article. It can be something as simple as a form. If you look at a PhD student's workplace, you see all these notes. These are symbolic representations of literacy. I hope I'm not going too fast, right? So what I mean by symbolic representation is that if you interpret it in terms of academic research discourse, this is what it represents: the formal text, the informal text. There are professional texts, there are academic texts. So another thing that we must do is to allow students to become familiar, and they must also know why or what is the purpose of these documents. These are the things that we take for granted. I've learned that the hard way, because when I started supervising my postgrad students, I assumed that they will know where to find the relevant forms, the forms that are involved before they submit a thesis. The thesis itself is a large genre to deal with, but besides the thesis, they also have to submit several other forms. So you are not only dealing with one genre or one text, you are dealing with multiple texts. So they must know the purposes of these different texts, these different genres. So this is what you mean by the communicative purpose of a genre. Before you submit a thesis, you have to fill up a form. So the communicative purpose of the form is to fill up the details of the supervisor, the submission date, so that you can apply for the thesis to be examined. So the students must be made aware of all these relationships, the communicative purposes of these different texts. You know, if you are supervising a student, a master's student or a postgraduate student, it's not enough just to deal with the thesis. It's not enough just to tell them, go write a thesis or, prepare your chapter 1. They will not know, for a start, what chapter 1 entails. What is the communicative purpose of chapter 1? How can you make chapter 1 talk to chapter 2? Sometimes students submit theses that is so disjointed. When you start off reading chapter 1, by the time you come to chapter 4, you have no idea, or you can't see the connection on why the student did this or, made a decision. So these are the nuances of text, and that is what I want to talk about today. Of course, due to time constraints, I won't be able to cover a lot of things, but I would like to just highlight some pertinent or important things that we take for granted. Okay. So let me move on to the next one. Oh, by the way, when you look at literature, researchers call this relationship. You see, researchers imagine that all these texts are related to one another. So they call it as constellation of genres. A constellation, that is all, when you look up at the constellation, there are many stars. So in the academia, there are different texts, just like the multiple stars that you see. So it's a constellation of genres. They've also talked about it as a network of genres because one form is related to another. So they imagine it as a network. So you have a network of genres. Okay. Just now, Prof. Bala's presentation was very interesting, and it also overlapped with what I had to say. He talked about, allowing students to go for conferences, not just students, you have to go for conferences, you have to write research articles. We take it for granted that, lecturers know how to go for conferences. The first thing is you need to know what conference to apply for. What does it take to present a paper in a conference? Right? These are the things that nobody talks about, or it's not written down in any textbooks. We learn this through our experience over a long period of time. So sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't. Okay? So if you're going for a conference, there are a lot of things that are involved. So let me just try to imagine this. So if I'm applying for a conference and I search the internet and I have a list of conferences, an example is the one that Prof. Bala showed us just now. Okay. Once you go there, you have to see whether the theme is related to what you want to do. If not, you'll end up presenting in a conference that's meant for the hard sciences, the engineering, or the something that is not related to your field of work. Okay, and then I'm sure once you're agreeable to the conference, you have identified which one you want to present in, then you have to look at the forms. What is it that the organizers want you to do? In general, usually you have to prepare an abstract. You have to identify or name your co-presenters, unless you're presenting on your own, right? So then you have to decide how much is the fees. Will you get a certificate, right? Do you have to submit the entire full paper, or can you just present but not submit a research article, the full paper? At the end of the conference, do you want to stop there, or do you want to send it for publication? So it's like a long journey, and there are checkpoints where you have to stop and decide, what you want to do. Okay. And throughout this journey, there are texts, there are forms, there are texts that have to be prepared accordingly. Okay. So if you write an abstract for that conference, how should you structure it? Or can you simply write one? You have something in mind, a research topic, and can you write it like a story? Is it enough to just say what you've done? If you write it like a story and submit it to the conference organizers, they may reject it on the basis that a story may not look like a researchable topic, right? Or it may not be structured in the way that they want it. So you have to understand the social activities behind the text. What is the purpose of the abstract, the conference abstract? What is the purpose of the conference abstract? Is it to give a summary? Or are you going to move on to write the whole paper based on the summary? So these are the decisions that we have to make as writers. And, this is such a challenging thing to do. Because at the end of the day, we want to publish, let's say I want to publish a paper that has implications for my career. Because my university wants us to publish a certain number of papers a year. So that has implications in the long run for me. So I have to make a lot of decisions. This is very challenging, and I need to do this. So if you think about the students, postgraduate students, it's even worse for them. Okay, because where do you start? How do you start? So that's why it's important as instructors, as teachers, right? To inform this to the students, to talk about this. We need to have conversations, or we need to talk about this. Unfortunately, people think that you can learn this by yourself. You can discover this for yourself, right? In my experience, I learned a lot from working with my colleagues. I've got a wonderful set of colleagues, and we share information. So we learn that way, right? We have a good support system at the university, in a sense that we have access to the library, we have access to resources. But there are people who have very limited resources or who do not have a support system. So what do? Well, of course, obviously, it's on you. The onus is on you. You have to take your own initiative to start somewhere, right? But these days, we have access to the internet, right? So collaborate. A platform like this is wonderful. There are 30 or 40 people in this forum, or in this session. So reach out to someone whose topic is interesting to you. Work with them. So in a way, this is how we relate to a research model or a research theory, because social constructivism tells us that we learn from our peers. And the more we share, the more we engage in this kind of activities, the more we expand our knowledge. So if you talk about a theory, this social constructivism helps us to understand this whole experience. So this is what we should be doing, right? So having said that, let me move on. If you look at these two texts, I've not put a label, but without telling you this is what text A is, you can guess that text A is a recipe, right? And text B, if you're familiar with journal articles, with research articles, you can say very easily, this is a research article, right? So what makes a recipe, while text B is a research article? In very simple terms, if you look at text A, there are two components to this text. There are ingredients and directions. So for sure, in one look, you can say this is a recipe. Now, if at all, I remove the ingredients, so the top part, the two large eggs up to the quarter spoon and all that. If I remove this part, this section, will it look like a recipe? I'm sure you'll disagree. Because we all know, our prior knowledge tells us that a recipe has to have these two components in a text. And if we miswrite this, or if we do not clearly present it this way, then the reader will not recognize the text as a recipe. So that's a very simple example that you can share with your students. So if you look at text B, this is a research article. And what makes it a research article? It has got a title, it's got the names of the authors, and most research articles begin with an abstract, followed by the introduction. If you take any properly written journal article, you'll be able to identify these sections: the abstracts, the introduction, the background. So like the recipe, a research article has to have its specific identifiable components. I hope I'm making myself clear, not running too fast. Okay. Just give it a few seconds to take this in. I know it's a bit too much, especially in an afternoon after lunch. For us, it's lunch here, 1:45.
Your presentation is very clear and interesting, Dr. Kartiani. I'm following it.
Please feel free to interrupt me, Prof, because I can only see my slides. I have no idea what's happening to the people there, right? So This is what we mean by the constitution or the internal features of a text. In simple words, it means the internal features of a text, and every text can be recognized because of the features that it has. So if you look at the recipe, I mentioned just now, if you remove any one of the sections, you will not recognize it as a recipe. If you were to send this to an examiner, the examiner will shoot you down. He said, why is this section missing? It's incomplete. So that is why we have a lot of grievances. So the lecturers say, students' work are incomplete, students' work are full of errors, it doesn't meet my expectations, it has no depth. So if you actually stop and analyze or, follow what I'm saying, this is what it means. There are components there that they are not familiar with or they do not know how to organize. And each component has got its own features. So if you look at the recipe, this is the structure and this is what and how you should write it. And it has more than this, it also has a communicative purpose. And what is the communicative purpose of a recipe? In simple words, why do you use that text for? What is it used for? You use a recipe because you want to cook something or bake something. So it has a communicative purpose. There is a social purpose, in other words. Similarly, the research article also has a social purpose. Now, this is what lacks. When I said at the beginning of my presentation, I said we must have awareness, we must have, we must be more conscious. This is what I meant. We are not aware of the features, we are not aware of the communicative purpose of the text. I'm talking about educators. So if we train ourselves to look, to observe and to deal with all this, then we must also, share this information with our students, especially if you want them to write in a particular way. For postgraduate students, you want them to go for their viva, you want them to complete a thesis. Then what is the communicative purpose of the thesis? How should it be structured? What are the requirements? How can a thesis be organized? Is it enough to just say a thesis is organized in terms of chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? As long as you have these 5 chapters, you're done. Is it enough to say that? I'm sure in your experience, when you've read theses, you can see that chapter 1 is very different than chapter 2. Chapter 2 is the literature survey. And that gives a bigger picture. Chapter 2 gives a bigger picture to place our research, because we're going to look at what other people have done. And we want to answer a question, we want to address a gap, and we want to say, this is what I've done in my research. So chapter 2 is very important, because in order to do a research, you have to say, there's some research done, but it's not good enough, or there are some things that are not addressed. So that is why this research is important. So you need to have that kind of a mindset. All right, that's the communicative thinking that you need to have. What is chapter 2 for? So it has a communicative purpose. Likewise, all the chapters in a thesis have got its own peculiar communicative purpose. So what are these? So we need to teach our students this. Don't expect them to know all this. Just because they are in a master's program or a PhD program, it does not mean that they know or they have this knowledge. In fact, I would say, being an educator myself, I've picked this information along the way. Okay. So let me just move on a bit. So I think what's the point of my discussion till this point of time is that we need to create an awareness that students belong to this discourse community. It's not just the administrators, it's not just you and me. The students must be made aware that they belong to this discourse community. The only difference is that we have 2 types of learners. We have the experts who know how to write and communicate. And at the bottom line, we have the newcomers, the novices, the students. But we all belong to this community, right? So if you look at SWALES, 1990, he describes what a community is like. So I'm not going to bore you with this, but it's enough to say that this is the same thing, but I've looked at it in terms of teacher training university. What is our set of common public goals? What is it that we want to do at the teacher training university, especially when we want to talk about academic discourse, academic writing? What are teachers expected to produce? Because now in the earlier presentation, we saw examples of encyclopedia and examples of handbook, examples of digests, journals. Actually, Prof. Bala has made my life very easy because he's already introduced you to all that. So do we want our teachers, before they graduate, to be able to publish in those journals? Or if you're a teacher educator, how are you going to participate in that? Are you, should you publish in that? But before we talk about, should or shouldn't be, I think we should know the differences between what an encyclopedia is, what is a handbook, what's a journal, what's a journal article. Start with that. In my experience, some of my colleagues too have problems in differentiating this. And I also learned this very much later in life. I had no idea what a research journal is and the difference with a handbook. When I open a handbook, it also has research articles. Then why isn't that a journal? Why is that a handbook? So there must be a slight difference in why it's called a handbook and why a journal is a journal. So I've learned over the years that a handbook is a collection of research articles on a particular theme or research articles on a particular theme that are published in that year. If I had known this as a student, it would have made my job very, very easy. Because if you do your literature review, and if you can get hold of a handbook, the handbook would have listed out all the current research in the field. So you don't have to, just randomly search. So a handbook is a very, very important tool for researchers. And as teachers, teacher trainees, if we can find a handbook, on teacher education or practices or approaches. Just now somebody asked, how do you use a model? The handbook will be able to tell you the current models, the current approaches in the field. So it's important that we identify our common goals. What are the mechanisms? So these are the mechanisms. These are quite easy to understand. We deal with different text types, right? How do we share information? Well, we have a platform like this. Okay. What are the language features that teachers use? Just listen to teacher talk. I also had a slight opportunity to listen to the organizers this morning, right? That is a feature. There are features to that talk. It's a specific language style. Okay. So let me move on. So please, I'm appealing to you, bear in mind that what I'm talking about now is not something that is totally alien, because from day one that the students register for your at the university for your course, they are already exposed to multiple texts, multiple genres. And by the time they graduate and become a trained teacher, or maybe, go on to do their postgraduate studies, they are already socialized to the 3-4 years. So when you say socialized, they already are exposed to academic and professional texts. They know what are the skills involved, the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. They know that a class presentation may involve oral presentation or maybe a submission, which is just a written. So these communicative purposes are already there in the environment. Our job is just to help them see, help them observe, pay attention to, the different aims, right? So why I'm saying this is because sometimes we take it for granted, right? So if you look at this, there are some important texts and some that are less important. Okay, so differentiate this. Let us be sensitive to the different types of text. So when you look at an article or a text, question yourself, what's the purpose of this text? Why am I reading this? So let me ask you, isn't that related to metacognition, which is an important skill that we should have? So asking questions allow us to raise this consciousness or awareness. And as teachers, we should ask questions to our students so that they become more sensitive. I'm not going to talk too much on this, but what is the benchmark for academic discourse? You know, we know that we want our students to write in a particular way, but what's the style? What is the benchmark for writing? Well, it's the style that you see in research articles that are published. Now, just a word of caution, because not all research articles that are published display very good language use. I'm talking about the ones that are published as handbooks, the ones that are published and listed in Scopus or highly indexed journals, right? At the bottom of this list would be student assignments or reports, which are important, but the rigor may not be as strict as the ones that you use in writing for a handbook, right? So it's a rigorous process. So let us be just aware of all this. So if you're learning to read and write, or if you want to improve your research writing skills, then you should be looking at the research articles from the top journals. So one example is this. We have a Journal of Teacher Education. Okay. So if you look at this, it's actually indexed in all these platforms. So it's quite credible. So look through these journals, look at the style, the choice of words, how it's presented. That's important. So let's educate ourselves. I'm putting myself in the same group as you because I'm learning too, right? So, and this is how I've learned. I pay attention to the words, the sentence structure, the phrases that are used in journal articles. And I try to use that in my own writing. It's not a form of plagiarism. We take what we need and make it our own. So we have to paraphrase it or structure it in a particular way. And if you're familiar with the Common European Framework, this is what we want students to be able to do. They should be able to produce clear, smooth flowing, complex ideas. So I've summarized that for you. And if you look at the ones that I've highlighted, the writing should be well structured. It has to flow smoothly. And at the postgraduate level, they must display some critical thinking. They must be able to synthesize information, argument. Okay? I've summarized this from the descriptors earlier. So I just want to highlight a few things. These are the things that, you know, we want our students to be able to do. So now, before I go into the nuts and bolts, please bear with me. This is very important, but I'm not going to be elaborating on this because I think this is a case for a different session. Now, before we talk about the nitty-gritty, teach them how to use grammar or the phrases, we need to tell them about the rhetorical structure. It's like building a house. Before you build a house, you need to have a framework, a blueprint. So that will give us an idea of the depth or how big the house that we want to build. So likewise, before we start writing and looking at the nuts and bolts, right, teach them that there are structures. If you talk about a research article, you can easily look up on this CAST model. There are different models, but this is something that I personally like, so I want to share with you on this. This is the CAST model. 1 second. And this is how it looks like. This is just a small excerpt from the CAST model. So Swale say that a CAST model can be used to structure the different aspects of a research article. So you can use this model to structure the abstract, to structure the introduction section. Right? So this is how a model may look like. I don't want to go into the details, but I just want to give you an idea of a rhetorical structure. So talk to them about the bigger picture of how to structure a writing, a piece of work. So if you're talking about a research article, you can look at this. Okay. So think about organizing it. What I do with my PhD students, I ask them to draw it out for me in the form of a mind map, to visualize it. And when they submit their chapters, let's say chapter 2 can go on to 20, 30 pages, as you know. You know, a dissertation or a thesis can go up to 20, 30 pages. It's very extensive. So what I ask them to do is prepare a content page. The content page is important just for chapter 2, so that I get to see the bigger picture before I start reading the details. So I think that is one skill that I've learned over the years. So try it out, right? So now I think I'm ready to talk about the nuts and bolts. Okay? Are y'all okay there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Just to proceed. We are all okay.
I have about another 20 minutes, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes.
Okay. So when I say nuts and bolts, it means the skills or the micro level, the micro elements in a report. I'm basically talking about grammar parts, right? Grammar items, grammar parts. But instead of just looking at it as a grammar component, it's more like the nuanced aspects of writing. And obviously, I cannot cover a lot of things, but I'm just going to highlight a few items, because these are the common things that I see, the common errors in my own students' work. So I want to talk about it. Okay. So the first thing is, the first thing that we can tell our students is to have maps and signposts in their writing. And if you look at the background, this is basically a map. All right. A signpost, the map gives you the bigger picture, whereas a signpost gives you a specific direction within the text. So don't worry about the definition here. Some examples that you can tell your students are to use discourse markers, like on the other hand. This page deals with, if you're looking at chapter 4 of a thesis, you can say something like figure 2 discusses. So in a way, you have to make it very explicit for the readers. These are some examples that I've taken. It is helpful to divide this theory into 2 areas. So when I read this, then I organize, as a reader, I organize my thoughts as in 2 parts. So I'm ready for these 2 strands of discussion that Hudson is going to talk about. So this is what I meant by a signpost or a signal. You can call it as a signal if you want, right? There are 2 main arguments for teaching KAL. So again, when I see this statement as a reader, I'm preparing myself to deal with 2 sets of arguments. The following, this is a simple meta discourse, as mentioned above. Okay, 2 suggestive themes have emerged from accounts of students. It can be a word, a single word like below, or it can be a phrase like this one. 2 suggestive themes have emerged. So it depends on the context of what you're writing. So tell your students to use these maps and signposts. Another thing that you can do is use instructions or directives like see. Just put it in paragraphs like in a parenthesis like this. See this website. If your student is writing a thesis, you can say see chapter 1. If you want to be a bit more detailed, you can say see chapter 1, page 6. This way, you tell your students that they can make the chapters communicate to one another. Chapter 1 can talk to chapter 4. Why I'm saying this is because chapter 4 is organized according to the research questions most of the time. And where do you find these research questions? In chapter 1. So in dealing with, when you're doing the research questions in chapter 4, have a statement like, refer to the list of research questions and objectives in chapter 1 page. So in a way, you make the chapters talk to one another. So these are skills that we need to inform our students. So we should be seeing this more, right? If we don't have this, you can still have a fine thesis. It's not a problem. But we want the ideas to flow smoothly. We want to make it a better, thesis in a way that, we want to see the student's voice in the thesis. A lot of times students prepare a proposal, but I don't see the student in the proposal because they know what they're doing, but they look very detached from what they're presenting. They don't take ownership of what they present. It's their research, but they don't show the ownership. So how do we show ownership? So these are the things that, that are important. Another question that, I have students asking is, can I use the personal pronoun? I tell them, why not? Especially my PhD students, because it reflects on ownership. But of course, for master students, it's a bit tricky because when they start using pronouns, sometimes they tend to be informal. There's a danger there. If you use pronoun, you still have to maintain the formality. Okay? But using I is something that we see in research articles. So just now I mentioned that the language in research article is the benchmark, right? So if we see this, if we see experts using pronouns, then it's most probable that we can also use pronouns in our thesis and dissertation. But you can decide. At the end of the day, we have to follow the policies of the university. So if you have a university guidebook, then you can state something like, students can use pronouns or students should not use pronouns. So have a kind of guideline for the students. And why is it so difficult for students, especially the PhD students, to use pronouns? Why do we have to be detached? Well, researchers say it's because of the tradition that we come from. In the Western tradition, researchers take ownership. It's very common for them to say, I, my work. But it's a bit different in our tradition. It's a kind of a discomfort. As a writer, I'm not very comfortable in using pronouns. But I'm aware that I have the choice. That's important. Tell your students that they have a choice. If you choose to use pronouns, then you have to make sure that it is still in the formal style of writing. Okay? So if you look at this picture, this is one of my favorites, Moni. If you look at the bottom of the picture, he's got his signature there. In a way, this represents their ownership, their individuality. And this is how the Western world is like, because research, if you look at the research articles, the highest number of research articles are produced in Western countries, in the UK, in the US. So, in a way, we have to adapt to that background, I would say, not tradition. That's a bit too strong. Not tradition, but to that style. And we know where that style is coming from. So for them, I is individuality. They take ownership for the ideas. So perhaps we can train our students, or we should allow our students to use pronouns. Okay? With caution though. These are examples. I first proposed the term. In our context, if you write something like, I first proposed the term, it's like, you are being boastful. But no, in the Western context, this is accepted. I proposed my dissatisfaction. In this chapter, I discuss definitions of ethnicity. I end with suggestions. I think our job is to introduce our students to this style of writing. Then they can make a decision. Do not penalize students if they use pronouns. This is my opinion. Okay. And if we use pronouns, then we should also be open to words like we and us. And why do researchers use this? The expert writers use this because we represent group solidarity. It's a very clever way, actually. It's a clever way of saying that the reader, you are the reader, you and I are in the same page. So how do you introduce this? Let us deal with this first. These are the examples that I've taken. We need to consider this. In a way, you position yourself with your readers. So positioning yourself is another important topic, but I don't want to go into that. I think it's enough just to say, just to create an awareness, tell your students, how do they position themselves? So use words like letters, we. Even if they don't use pronouns throughout the text, but at some point in their thesis or dissertation, they can use these letters, maybe in the recommendation part. And likewise, in the research article too, at the end, in the conclusion or recommendation section, they can do this. Okay. Do you know that expert writers covertly show politeness in their writing? Because we are so trained to think that we cannot show emotions, we cannot have informal, style in writing. But expert writers do it all the time. And how do they do this? How do they show politeness? And why is it important to show politeness? Because you want to show solidarity with your readers. In other words, to say that the readers, you and I are on the same side. So I have to be polite, right? So these are some examples. The following sections will discuss the findings in light, blah, 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 suggest potential future revenues. I'm not shoving it down your throat. I'm only suggesting. This again can be discussed in relation to, this again can be discussed. In a way, you're telling your reader, we can discuss this further. It's not the end, it's not a conclusive thing, but we can discuss. We are open to discussion. So that's welcome. And then other example, this can be considered rather tentative, the word rather. We know that rather is not something that is, being forceful, rather sort of like modulates. So this is one way. This suggests. Look at the last one. I didn't underline any words there. There are several possible reasons why this function is often performed. And I'm sure you can tell which word denotes politeness. It's the possible. So there is a possibility. I'm doing this research and I found this, but there is a possibility for further discussion. I think this is allowed in the social sciences especially, because we're dealing with human beings. Our epistemology tells us that we don't know everything about the human experience. It's very complex. It's very sophisticated, right? So I cannot come down to a point where I can conclusively say A is because of B. There are a lot of other issues, right? There are a lot of other social issues. There are a lot of other factors. But my research points me in a certain direction. So that's why I use terms like this. There are several possible reasons. So these are examples of politeness strategies. Just a word of caution, don't overuse them. Don't make it too tentative. Then the reader can turn back and ask you, then how sure are you? So it's a fine balance. You don't want to say it's conclusive, this is the end of the road. You don't want to say that, but at the same time, you want to show that your research is credible. So you use a few politeness words here and there. Okay? So if you're interested in knowing more about politeness strategies, read up on hedging. Another aspect of writing that is ignored most of the time, or the least paid attention, is the use of the it clause. In general, we all know that it represents a pronoun, but it also has got a politeness strategy to it, right? Let's just, okay. The main differences between the two corpora are in the use of it clauses to persuade readers of the validity of claims, with student writers making apparently greater and more overt persuasive effort. So the meaning here is that sometimes the students overdo it. You tell them about politeness strategies, sometimes they overdo it as compared to the expert writers. So this is what I said just now. We have to teach them about the fine balance, right? And that takes time and experience. You have to engage in writing yourself to discover this. This is a typical way. If you look at this, usually pronouns are used as a cohesive device. So you have chin study is relevant as it there represents chin study. And then you have a second time, the writer uses it. So there is a chain. So pronouns actually help you to create that cohesive chain. Sometimes students who are not very good at using pronouns, they may have errors. Sometimes instead of a singular subject or plural subject, there are errors. So you can actually look at the chains to see whether there is a correct use of pronouns. This is a very simple way of doing it. But the function of the it is not just as a pronoun. It has got a more important function. Important, I wouldn't say more, but another important function is that it works as a sentence header or a subject. For example, here, in short, it is not required of teachers. The it here doesn't represent a pronoun, but it is simply used as a sentence header to start a sentence. Hence, it is important to examine. If you remove the hence, if you remove the in short, you can just begin. It is not required of teachers. It is important to examine. It could be inferred that it doesn't represent a noun, but expert writers simply use it to start a sentence. This is one way to create a formal style to writing. Okay? So what we should do is get students to download articles, samples, and ask them to identify the it pronoun or the it word in an article and ask them to categorize whether it's used as a pronoun or a sentence header. This is one way of getting the students to pay attention, especially the postgrad students. And if you couple it with another word like it seems, it may, it could, you can actually create this indecision or reluctance, right? A lot of my students like to use it seems, it seems. Okay? These words are very common in the social sciences and less in the hard sciences. You don't see an engineer saying this theory is this because it seems that these factors, we don't see the hard sciences using this word. But in the social sciences, we need to use these words to a certain level, right? But if you overuse them, then it shows you cannot make a decision or you are reluctant, right? But it's also related to politeness. Now, I mentioned just now about students' identity, how, when you use the pronoun I, when you use the pronoun I, it very clearly shows that you are there in the text. Now, expert writers sometimes reveal their identity in their writing, and sometimes they pull back. So this is an example. How you can change the use of, go to and fro with the use of personal pronoun and I. You see, the writer starts with, I suggest that the investigation of citational patterns, blah, blah, blah. So when you use I, it shows author presence. But later on in the text, he says, it is helpful, for example, for students to realize there is a detachment. So expert writers seem to do this. At some points in the research article, they reveal their identity or their presence, in fact. And sometimes they pull back. So this is something that, that I've noticed, and it's also reported in research. So perhaps we can also pay attention to these aspects. You don't have to use pronoun all the time, but there are some instances where you need to show your author presence. How do you show your author presence if you don't use a pronoun at all? In that case, you have to use verbs. So I'm coming to that in a short while. Right? This is something that you find in students writing. Expert writers seldom use this. This is what one research says. Don't use words like it is amazing, it is strange. These are actual texts from students writing published in research article. Okay. And according to this study, none of these adjectives were found in experts writing. So I was trying to, Google and see whether this is credible. And, look what I found. Expert writers do use adjectives. Look at these examples. For nearly a century, an important strand in English. If you remove the word important, it becomes, for nearly a century, a strand in English language. But by using the word important there, it shows that the work is serious and it's very crucial at this point. So they sparingly use adjectives, not in the way that students use wise or amazing, but words like important, key, but presents considerable difficulties. Charles could have just, left out considerable and just put difficulties. But by adding the word considerable, he's telling us that this is serious, considerable. Okay, and then we have words like the following sections will discuss the findings in light of the precious research. This one was taken from a conference proceeding. That's why I said direct your students to the more established journals so that they can pick up the style that is credible and correct. This one, normally articles published in proceedings can be questioned because they don't go through the rigorous process of editorial activities, I would say. Okay. Again, the use of that clause, just now was it. Now, pay attention how that clause is used. The most frequent verb group that is used is argue. James argued that, for example, or Skinner argues that. That's a different version. Okay? Or Sun showed that. So usually there is a verb that is used with the that clause. It becomes a clause, right? Another overused features in students' writing is sometimes students use both, either or, neither nor. I tell my students, if you remove the words both or either or, neither nor, will the meaning change? And you'll find actually the meaning will still be the same. So what you do is you are being economical with words. So train your students to be economical, right? To reduce the number of words so it becomes more concise. And novice students tend to overuse words like and, but, so they don't really, use complex sentences. So ask them to underline the sentences, the complex sentences in research article, ask them to analyze those sentences. Okay? So that is one way of doing it. And in conclusion, we seldom find this in research, in experts' texts, but this is an example from a student's work. And this is only findings, the findings section as a conclusion. So what's the purpose of putting the word conclusion in a findings and discussion section? Clearly, the student doesn't know that, it's not the conclusion yet when you talk about the findings. So these are the issues that we have. I think I'm coming to the tail end of the presentation. There are a lot of things that can be said about verbs. Verbs represent our judgment, our opinions, our moral stand, ideologues, okay? And especially research articles are full of reporting verbs. These are some examples of variations that we can inform our students: acknowledge, advocate, reckon. But the most common ones that my students use are state and seem, say, show. And why do they use these words show or say? It's because I think in a way, one, they are not aware of the choice of verbs. Another one is they are not aware that verbs represent the connotation or their stand. So they use neutral verbs like show or say. And master students should also do this. Postgraduate students, all levels of students, I don't know, they just seem to like this word show and say. And if they don't do that, there is an overwhelming use of according to, right? So you got to teach your students how do you remove the according. Why don't you just use the word, use a verb? Amina and Kartini, argued. Of course, if they use the word argue, there's got to be an argument. This is another problem that I see with my students. Sometimes they use the word argue, but there is no argument. So you got to tell them when you use verb, it has a meaning. It means that you're going to evaluate or judge something. So you've got to argue it out. It's just like watching a movie. This is the example that I use with my students. You know, when you watch a movie, you should be able to critique it, to say, why is the story good? Why is it bad? You know, what's good about a particular actor or a scene? So you should be able to evaluate it that way. So it's the same thing here. I'm sure when you evaluate a movie, when you review a movie, you wouldn't want to be safe. Your choice of verbs represent what you think. So similarly, the choice of words that they use here represent what they think. Right? So I hope this makes sense to you, right? The word argue, I think I've covered this. Right, I'm also going to skip this. So we've come to the end. So before I stop this, I would like to say that when your writing ends, your thoughts begin a journey in someone else's mind. So we have to start writing to begin with, right? Because we know that when we end, the ideas are carried through. And someone else is going to engage in that writing. So research writing is a conversation, is a very long conversation. We are taking part in somebody else's conversation. So that's why you need to do your literature review. In a way, we are taking part in that body of knowledge. So think of it as a conversation. And when we end our writing, somebody else is going to be taking part in that. So it's going to be a continuation, a conversation. It's going to be a very long conversation. So we cannot abruptly end that conversation. So that's why we need to use words like seems or show, sometimes a bit of this and that, right? So having said that, I hope you have enjoyed the presentation. So I'm just going to stop sharing. Hello, are you still with me?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And there is a question for you from Divya. Please proceed. Just read out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What type of materials we shall use in online classes? It was a question by Gajalakshmi.
There are a lot of materials that are online, and I always go for research articles for especially my postgrad students. What I'll do is I'll ask them to download a research article and bring it to class. So I look at these features, the ones that I've discussed with you. I ask them to search for those features in the research article. I think if you do this for a couple of classes, over a short period of time, you can see that they would have become sensitized to certain things. And they start noticing. I think noticing is important. In second language acquisition, we have the noticing hypothesis. I think it works the same in this as well. So get the students to download research articles, maybe on a topic that you give them, and then ask them to search or underline or highlight these items that you want them to, notice. I think that's a good way to start. Of course, there are a lot of other books, okay? But when you take a book, there are a lot of things there, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any queries?
Yes, sorry.
Dr. Kartiani, you have presented a very good presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Even I learned a lot. Actually, the way they write, it's very, very useful for researchers, writers. Thank you very much for a presentation. One of the things that you pointed out was there are many things we don't know. I think everyone should know what we know and what we do not know. The problem is some of them seems to think, give an impression that they know, but in actual fact, they do not know. I share this with you because it's a very great idea actually to start teaching people how to go about the certain things that you said, how to attend, how to find an article, how to publish. But superficially they say, yeah, I know, I've done, but when it comes to practicality of it, they find it difficult. Yeah, it's very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Kartiani. Looking forward to collaborate with you.
Thank you so much, Bob. I think you can start with the research article. This is what I do in my class. I ask them to download and bring these articles to class. And before that, prior to that, because we have access to WhatsApp, I share some articles with them. And I point them to some journals that are free on the internet, so they can actually go to those sites. If you use Google Scholar, we have amples of free articles. So I think we should give the students the liberty to download the articles that they want, instead of giving them an article of your choice, because they have their own comfort zone. So as long as it fulfills the criteria of a research article, then that's fine for a start. Let them bring that to the classroom. And another thing that I noticed, when they share or exchange these articles in the classroom, they become more aware, and they start paying attention to the sources, the different journals. So until there are some students, until at that point of time, they have no idea that certain journals are important in the field. They have no idea that there are some journals that we must refer to, in our field of study. So I think that's important. That's a starting point. I'm also curious about what's happening with the Lakshmi College and also the Tamil Nadu universities. I mean, what approach do you take? Do you require your postgraduate students to write research articles? I'm not too sure. Can somebody just share your experience?
Yes, ma'am. From Lakshmi College of Education, even we encourage students to write articles. And for your kind information, 7 students have published international journal, ma'am. I'm not sure about other national seminars, but we are encouraging.
Yeah. We have to take baby steps. You have to take baby steps. Yeah.
Sure, ma'am.
When I started in my career, we just randomly picked journals, but I was lucky that I had a group of colleagues, some of them have joined today, and we learn from one another. I think engaging with your colleagues, like-minded colleagues are important, right? That's important, like-minded colleagues who also want to publish. And when you do that, what you can do is you can review one another's work, you discuss and you talk. The important thing is to get the conversation going. Remember, I mentioned the word socialization. We have to get ourselves socialized in this, and then eventually we'll get our students into that habit of doing it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Helen, is there any queries?
No, sir. Shall I proceed, sir?
Helen?
Sir?
Is there any queries?
No, sir. Shall I proceed?
Then please. Yes, you may proceed now.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your answer. Now, I invite Ms. M. Melita to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Good afternoon, everyone. Gratitude is a wonderful way to draw more beauty into your life. My first gratitude to the Almighty, who is everywhere securing us. Thank you, Lord, to making this opportunity for us. My privilege to thank Honorable Vice Chancellor, Registrar, Controller of Examination, Director, Center for National and International Academic Collaborations, and faculty members, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University. Respected Chairman, Secretary, Principal, and faculty members, Lakshmi College of Education. I thank our guides, supporters, and encouragers for every time. As we express our gratitude, we must forget that highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to lie by them. It's my pleasure to thank Dr. Katyayani Subramaniam, Associate Professor, Faculty of Education, University, Technology, Mara, Malaysia. We only hear the words nuts and bolts in mechanical shop and using by mechanical students. Now, those words are used as a technique in academic writing. Thank you, ma'am. My heartily thanks to our organizing team and Dr. F. Vincent Rajasekhar for introducing the resource person, Ms. M. Tulasi for welcome address, Ms. R. Hallen who hosted the whole session. Thank you, organizing team. I would like to thank respected principals, deans, faculty members from various institutions and colleges. Thank you all. Gratitude is a quality of similar to electricity. It must be produced and discharged and used up in order to exit at all. My special thanks to our technical team, Mr. Prakash and Mr. Velu, are always supporting and resolving the problems in technical side and to help us in every time. Thank you, technical team. I would like to thank Tamil America TV for broadcasting. Blossoms of this occasion, students and alumni, Lakshmi College of Education, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, Research College, and students from various institutions and colleges. Thank you, my beloved friends. Once again, it is not happy people who are thankful. It is thankful people who are happy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vimalita. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Your presence made this day a memorable day. Thank you for your kind cooperation for being here, and most importantly, for giving your time and making it. We will meet you on the next session. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you, ma'am. Professor Mani has joined. Professor sir, your few words. Mani sir. Okay, I think he's not reachable. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he is now. He is in. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
I must thank Professor Katyayani for taking such a pain for joining us. Thank you very much, and I'm really very thankful to all of you for conducting this program today very successfully. Thank you, sir.
Sir, Professor Rana is still here, sir.
Professor Ji, I'm really very thankful for you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Rana Ji, very good afternoon. I'm very thankful to you for your continuous support to us. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Please go ahead, Vincent, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, delegates. Thank you, dignitaries. Thank you, authorities. Everybody I should thank. Sir, we should thank you all. We shall meet tomorrow. Thank you, especially Rana Ji, for patience listening from the very beginning day one. He is with us until the end of the moment. Thank you, everyone. We shall meet tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vincent, sir. Thank you, Mani, sir. Thank you, Katyayani, madam. Thank you.